Well, first of all, let me just address the fact that it's been a really long time since the last update, but I'm still here, actually, and um, hopefully we'll get some more regular updates in now. But on to today's topic. So we're going to discuss a very important series of games for the PC platform as a whole, which is not your Doom or whatever FPS or whatever you might expect, but rather a more serene form of entertainment, perhaps. So mankind has invented many different forms of sport so that we may compete against each other in feats of skill, strength, dexterity, and so on. We have invented soccer and ice hockey and running and spear throwing and wrestling and basketball. But the Scots, upon observing the rolling hills and the endless highland plains of their country, figured that a good way of determining one's skill against others would be to hit a ball long distances using a club and attempt to hit a pole. Thus, the game of golf was invented. So little did the Scots know that golf would evolve from a sport to an isolated world of country clubs and friendly games where the wealthy elite of the modern day would meet to have maybe a casual walk, drink together outside of the public eye at the country club, and of course give each other bribe money off the record. So golf became very popular and very exclusive. Suddenly you needed all these expensive gear, exclusive memberships to clubs that only let in the very top of society, special dress code, and lots of other shenanigans. But at home, though, in the 80s, we had home computers. And with these home computers, we could partake in this exclusive world of hitting balls in the gorgeous country club surroundings with the help of one of the oldest video game simulation forms there is, namely the golf simulation. So they were plentiful in the 80s, especially on the then businessman centered IBM PC systems where golf was a natural pastime for many office managers and higher ups who could afford these systems for work. So on the PC platform, golf simulations was a big thing, but they were not really that good. They were rudimentary and they did not really simulate the game very well. And all those lush environments that characterized the game in real life was not really depicted very well, possibly due to technical limitations. So this was all about to change in 1990. This year would see the release of one of PC gaming's biggest franchises of all time, a series that will go on to sell an impressive amount of copies to all layers of society and target demographics, and would spin off into official Microsoft software and even become bundled with Windows PCs, a series that would finally capture the flair and the environments and the somber grandeur, if you will, of modern golf and would pioneer some truly impressive tech for the time. And this series was the highlight of today's discussion, Lynx. So let's go back to the beginning though and talk about Access Software. So Access Software was one of the earliest software developers in the US, initially taking form all the way back in the first formative days of the PC concept in 1982. So it was formed by and around the Carvers, namely Bruce and Roger Carver, as well as business partner Chris Jones. So the official Access Software company was formed from a previous company called Red Engineering in 1983, and the first piece of software sold was the sprite editing tool called Sprite Master. Over the years, they would create many groundbreaking games, including very early full motion video games in the Tex Murphy adventure series. They will also come under Microsoft ownership and come to create, among other things, the snowboarding game, the famed one Amped, for the original Xbox. However, like back in the home computer craze of 1984, the young Access Software, they had a dream to create a fluid golf game. So a game that they felt would bring justice to the way that golf was played in real life, and that would be a true simulation. So equipped with a very expensive VHS camera, remember this is very expensive technology at
Nice
the time.
try. That's a beauty.
They took that camera and they took to filming Roger Carver as he was playing golf. Roger was an avid golf player, and the idea was to take these video frames and, with the help of their in-house very clever sprite and capture technology, remember Sprite Master, for example, their earlier application, with that, use that to create lifelike animations. So they also studied extensively how to fit an entire golf course into the limited memory of the computers at the time, noting years later that it was a major struggle. However, with the programming mastery of Roger and the design skills of Bruce, eventually Leaderboard for the Commodore 64 home computer was born and brought to market in 1986 to what was actually glowing reviews. It was the pinnacle of golf gaming up until that point, and the critics, while not always golf enthusiasts, they loved it. It was not only a technical and graphical wonder, it captured the whole essence of the sport. So within the same year, an add-on with more courses was released, which also sold very well. In fact, Leaderboard was the best-selling Commodore 64 game overall in the UK for 1986. World Class Leaderboard was the final game in the series and equally well reviewed, released in 1987, this time on multiple computer formats such as the Amiga, the Atari ST, CPC, Amstrad CPC, Macintosh, even on the consoles like the Sega Master System version, but not on the IBM PC yet, because that was still to come. And it was about to create a true revolution in golf simulation. So programming wise, Access had started experimenting with combining their already uh, impressive VHS to computer animation techniques with something at the time referred to as a raster ahead, not to be confused with the later concept render ahead, which is used still today in like multi-buffered rendering. Uh, in graphical programming terms, what they were doing was a form of the painter's algorithm. This means that, like a painter, you draw a scene from the back and forward so that objects closer to the viewpoint will eventually cover the ones further away. However, the farther objects are still placed in the scene, so it is
Nice putt.
wasteful since you have to rasterize and output scene nodes and objects that would anyhow be covered up in subsequent passes. However, the method used by Access at this time was a bit more clever. So they experimented with being able to take a topographical map, kind of like Google Maps or satellite view today, and using their algorithm to render what it would look like from any ground perspective. And then they could add trees and terrain features and other details. So it could also do some clever things to selectively prepare parts or sections of the output depending on visibility, thus culling away unseen scene objects and terrain geometry. So in action, it will look like a screen where the viewpoint is filled in part by part or section by section until you have a complete picture emerging. So you see parts of the view materialized, followed by another part, and then some trees and so on as the algorithm builds the scene. So no matter where you start from or where you are facing on the data structure representing the topography, the view would adapt and you would see the terrain as it would look on the ground from that specific point on the overall map, kind of like a programming driven uh, version of Google Street View, for example, where you could like rotate the view uh, around fixed viewpoint. So all this technical trickery was obviously a great fit for visualizing in first person various locations where you had a map of shifting features and topology, like obviously a larger golf course. And this is where Links is starting to take shape. Since a golf game is based largely on a static scene where you make your shot, there is no need for fast frame rates, and the algorithm can take its time to really build an accurate simulated view of the surroundings before turning over control to the player. This idea forms the base for the game engine used in Lynx and remains largely unchanged throughout the series up until the very last of the games going full 3D. But that was like way into the 2000s. So uh, this particular rendering technique stuck with the series for very long. And another thing that the team felt that they wanted with the inevitable follow-up to Leaderboard was to truly push the boundaries of simulations. They wanted high resolution, 256 color graphics, digitized sampled sounds, lots of frames of animation for the main character sprites, large databases of player and core statistics, full real life golf courses digitized one to one, realistic wind, accurate slopes, and all of the intricacies of the game, like different stances, customized club selections, rules variations, a realistic way of swinging, and things like that. So, in the late 80s, as those of you who were around then, like me, remember the Commodore Amiga was still seen as the gaming powerhouse computer platform. But Access saw where the IBM PC was going, and it was going in the direction that they needed. First of all, it had the business and adult user base who would appreciate a realistic golf simulation, but also the tech itself was going in the direction of powerful 16-bit 386 processors, lots more memory than the Amiga had, hard drives that could store large databases, and 256 color VGA graphics, where you could also use high resolution modes if you considered some trade-offs. So thus, Access would, years ahead of most, put all their eggs in the IBM PC basket, deciding that Lynx would be a PC release. For a game released in 1990, this is very forward thinking. But it was driven by the specific needs of their simulation. A game like Lynx would not work properly on an Amiga where a hard drive was a rarity and the display models were built for fast display of simpler platform games on what is more or less a TV set. What Access wanted was a proper, advanced, somber simulation with the most realism and fidelity. And Lynx would be where this came together into a product line that would endure for many years and would receive constant praise from critics and enthusiasts alike as being the best golf game around. The iconic look of the Lynx series and the swing meter is still recognized to this day by old and grey golf sim enthusiasts as the peak design of the golf simulation. Um, the swing meter is in Lynx was revolutionary at the time, where you first hold down your mouse button, and then when you get to the distance you want to hit, indicated on the circular meter, you release the mouse button, then you wait for the indicator to turn around and come back down, and when it comes back down you try to click your mouse button again as close as possible to the straight line indicator, and whatever skew you have from that line, you will skew your shot in that direction. This can actually be used also tactically to slightly skew your shot on the fly when swinging, or you can also end up missing your click and then hitting your ball into the woods somewhere. Um, So it also works like the harder you hit, meaning the longer you wait to release the mouse button, the longer, the faster the indicator comes back down, indicating that it's harder to hit the ball straight, the more power you put into the stroke. While there are multiple versions of the game, from the first Lynx in 1990 to the updated and enhanced Lynx 386, often seen as the best version, and its various sub-versions like 386 CD, then 386 Pro, and eventually the ultimate 386 Pro CD, and up all the way up to 1997 and Lynx LS 1996 and 7,
Looks like I hit the
actually
tree,
with the
Jim.
Lynx LS revamp, and then following then the Lynx LS 1998, 99, and 2000 versions. But in general, most
Looks
people
like I hit the
mostly
tree,
remember
Jim.
Lynx 386 and its enormous collection of course add-ons that you could buy, um, or the Microsoft Golf spin-off that was often bundled in OEM PC deals. Now, speaking of Microsoft Golf, that is a story well worth mentioning. So, back in 1992, Windows 3 was revolutionizing the graphical desktop for mainstream PC users. However, the number of entertainment titles available for this graphical DOS front end was quite limited. So Windows had a quirky programming model and a less than stellar handling of animated graphics, which meant that we mostly had edutainment and card games. However, since the PC at the time was in many ways an expensive business machine used by serious financial analysts with suits and ties and briefcases, things like puzzle and card games worked rather well. But Microsoft wanted more people to see the multimedia capabilities of their Windows platform. So remember that at this time, multimedia was being launched as this new big buzzword, meaning a computer with a digital sound card, 16-bit sound card, a CD-ROM drive, and a VGA monitor was seen as a multimedia system. So they wanted something that would have digitized animation, sound, and make use of all these new fancy menu and windowing systems available in the Windows operating environment. However, fast-paced action games would be quite difficult because they relied on like VGA modes and tricky direct programming stuff not available in Windows, where the windowing system was still an abstraction layer. Also, uh, Microsoft wanted serious software, if you will. Software like their Flight Simulator series, for example, that was for the advanced and adult user of personal computers. So rumor has it that Microsoft execs used to play Lynx at work. Now someone probably noticed this and they said, "Hey, golf is a serious and adult thing, and this thing could benefit from having multiple windows." So they reached out to Access and inquired if it would be possible to convert the Lynx game code into Windows API code, making full use of the windowing system. Uh, Access knew that this could be a big thing given the increased popularity of Windows, so they said, sure, we can do that. And then, with the help of some sweet licensing cash, they hired a new group of people to make this happen. So programmer Steven Sabel, graphics artist Les Oswald, and others came in and started on Microsoft Golf in the newly formed Windows Golf game team. The development was troubled. There were lots of challenges in making the game modular so as to make use of windows within other windows, and also to make it run fast enough. Windows within Windows it was meant to be a multimodal application,
Oh,
meaning
man.
you have smaller windows inside your larger window, which is in Windows 3 was uh, not a straightforward thing to do. Uh, and they needed also to make it run fast enough, given that this windowing system was in the way as an abstraction layer. But eventually, what they ended up with was in many ways a better version of Lynx. It had enhanced visuals, and the windowed interface made it much easier to operate. And it played just like the original and was actually compatible with the Course add-ons for the original. So Microsoft bundled this into its Microsoft Home label of software. For those of you that remember that one, the blue little logo said Microsoft Home, that it had just created to foster a bigger uptake on Windows PCs for the household. And suddenly dads all over the world were neglecting their
Full
families to play
blocks.
virtual golf on the new and shiny personal budgeting machine that they had just bought. In 1993, Microsoft Golf was updated with a multimedia edition, including video and other nice stuff that was in many ways very ahead of its time. And then it continued being a separate spin-off to Lynx throughout the life of the main series, actually. In fact, it could be argued that more people remember Microsoft Golf being bundled with their new home PCs than they actually remember Lynx. And when Windows 95 came around, there was of course a new version of Microsoft Golf to showcase all the new features. So in 1998, though, Microsoft acquired Access altogether, forming the outfit Indie Built, and this would be the name under which they would later produce other things such as the amped snowboarding games for Xbox. But going back to Lynx, the main series kept with the DOS-based core game engine up until the release of the last of the classic games in the series, which was Lynx LS in 1996. So many consider this original trio of Lynx, followed by Lynx 386 and then Lynx LS, to be the pinnacle era of the series. However, others praise the modernization that happened with the release of Lynx LS 1998 edition that was released in late 1997. So this marked the time when the main series combined features with Microsoft Golf and became a fully Windows-based application following the acquisition and company um, and company change and restructuring. Other than that, it was still Lynx LS with very few changes. So in 1999, we had the release of Lynx Extreme, and that was a very weird action golf spin-off with deathmatch and demolition, driving range, and other zany modes, as well as some really weird course designs. Needless to say, that was a bizarre one. But the next big change though came with Lynx LS 2000. So we got a new revamped engine with a new interface design and much faster high resolution rendering. So Lynx 2001 and 2003 introduced polygonal graphics into the scenes, arguably making them look worse. And then note also that this was not entirely polygonal. There were some polygonal elements which made really made the graphics actually look much worse. But then we had Lynx 2004, which was an Xbox game with all 3D visuals brought out by Microsoft to enhance its Xbox Sports Network, or XSN sports line of games. That was an entirely different thing than the older formula, and it received some mixed criticism. That marked the end of the Lynx series. Microsoft quietly shut down operations after that, and the whole thing was acquired by Take-Two in 2006. However, many people and also the spirit of the old days, that kind of lives on in the still existing True Golf Simulator. Uh, the people behind True Golf are some of the original people behind Lynx, and that one is still being used for panoramic projection golf simulations in arcades and at various course venues. Still today, it's actually being updated even now. You've seen those where you hit a ball against a screen and it renders where it flies like a virtual driving range. That is in 90% of cases that is powered by TrueGolf. So that is the modern variant of what once was links. But to summarize, it is impossible to not be impressed by the massive success that Lynx was in its niche and
That's
by the
only short
tech
stuff.
that it had that made it possible to have high resolution golf simulation at an accurate level in your own home. The series as a whole ended up selling a massive amount of copies, as well as being the staple Microsoft Home software bundle that most people remember. If you want to revisit it today, it's fairly simple. At least if you stick to the basic DOS series, you could. My captures here come from Pentium 166 megahertz actual physical hardware through capturing devices, but it's all Lynx 386 is also on GOG, ready to run. Emulation like DOSBox deals just fine with the original Lynx as well as with Lynx LS. So you can the the games are fairly well programmed. They actually behave nicely even on faster CPUs. So my P166 MMX here had no problem, for example. My personal choice would be Lynx LS because of the added interface changes that makes it much simpler and nicer to use while still being in line with the DOS originals. It also looks much better with its crisp, high-res SVGA graphics. However, Lynx 386 CD is probably the most recommended edition in general, especially the later bundle that had many of the course disk add-ons included. That is, I think, the version that GOG sells as well. Uh, that was a dive into Lynx, and I hope you liked it. I recommend getting the game if you have even the slightest interest in golf, as it is in many ways unsurpassed even today. It's also an interesting game as an example of some really impressive tech for its time with its high resolution graphics and a rather unique rendering method. But yeah, so thank you for hearing me out, and hopefully it will not be as long until I can sit down and talk about some other
Nice
old
putt.
thing again. Also, you, I don't do the whole monetization stuff. In fact, this is not even a premium premium account. I don't even know how to do that. I hardly know how to edit anything. So I mean, it is what it is. These videos are not professional in any way. They're also not meant to be monetized, but or anything like that. I'm just glad that if a single person watches it and thinks it's interesting, then I'm happy with that. So I hope at least that you found it this talk interesting. And until next time, have a real nice time. See ya.